Welcome everyone to day one of the Marketing Practices Partner Week. It kicked off earlier with a keynote from Jay McBain, Chief Analyst from Canalys. It will continue throughout the week with presentations, fireside chats and Q&As with industry experts and our clients where we dive into the partner ecosystem and discuss what's ahead for channel strategy in 2025. I'm Ali Bancroft, our Partner Marketing Strategy Solution Lead at TMP. So next up is Will Taylor, founder of BD Paths. Will is well known in the revenue technology industry, where he's built partnerships for many years in several high-profile partnership roles. And he's also helped two companies exit in this space, and one being a media company, creating content on all things partnerships. So over the next 45 minutes, Will be walking us through the channel tech stack in a practical way, providing insights on actual partnering with a lot of the technology vendors. It'll be an interactive session, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll cover those as well as some additional questions in the last 10 to 15 minutes. So over to you, Will. Welcome.
Thank you, Ali. Everyone, thank you for your time. This is ultimately for you. So if you have questions, ask them throughout. I like to operate where if I'm presenting and I'm just talking into the void, I need some feedback. I need to know that you're enjoying it or that you have questions and that you're engaged. So I best operate when we're answering questions on the fly. So ask those questions. I'll see them pop up and I'll answer them in real time. Or if I need to, I'll let them go till the end, which we will have some time for. But don't be shy. This is an interactive session. There's a lot to go through. The channel tech stack, if you watch Jay's session or any of Jay McBain's content, he would have told you about the different islands, which I'll be covering at a high level. But ultimately, technology is going to be something that we really need to consider in the channel and partnership space. One of the core reasons for that is we wear so many hats. And so the more that we can automate, the more that we can remove the human error element in what we do, the better. And I'll get into this in my presentation as well. But we also need to be even better at showing the value of the partnerships that we're creating and the activities and what they produce. So I do have a slide deck. I don't know who loves or hates slide decks, but it'll get the point across, especially for all the visuals, because I'll be showing you some actual workflows and how to think about the tech, of course, as the title suggests. So let's start with, here's the agenda. If you want to go through it quickly, I'm going to cover who I am, the current landscape, why is it important for partnerships, how to simplify this, and then some definitions, and then getting into some actual examples of how you can think about it. So Ali introduced me. I'm Will Taylor. I am the owner of bdpaths.com. I've held multiple partnerships roles, and I am data obsessed. And this all goes back to my quote that, well, not my quote, but it is a quote that keeps running in my brain. Without data, you only have an opinion. Now, unfortunately, a lot of us in partnerships and channel have been getting let go. And, it's partly because of the broader economic situation, but it's also in part because we don't have our own internal data. We may have some industry data that can say partnerships and channel is effective and it's good and we need to invest in it as a business. But for most CROs, it's a black box. They don't know how to get more out of what they are already getting out of their channel program. And that's a problem. And so I am more and more obsessed with what is the data, what is our data in an organization, and how can we actually leverage that. On the screen here, some companies that I've worked with on the right. I've been at the center of the ecosystem for a while, media company that created content around partnerships in the channel. And I worked at Reveal as well, which is a partner tech company. And so I partnered with Partner Tech. So those logos at the bottom here, these are all of the organizations that I partnered with, and then some as well. So I've dug my heels into all of this and put my fingers on the data. And of course, part of this tech stack that we're seeing here. And it's a big beast to take on. So I'm going to help you make sense of it. So coming out of this, you are going to be able to identify what technology fits where, or at least better navigate that, as well as how to actually go through the decision-making process when considering what tech do I need as a channel program and what should I focus on first? Do I buy the PRM? Do I sign up for Crossbeam or Reveal? Do I need automation? Is it through channel marketing? Where do I start? Because right now there's a big map, but we don't know how to be guided through it. That's my goal today, and I'll give you some actionable examples and tips for you to make that decision yourself. So, like I said, Q&A, there's a Q&A button in the Zoom controls. If you hover over, there should be either Q&A or it's under the More section. Like I said, I will be monitoring that for any questions that come in because you may have some, because this is a lot to go through. But let's dive in. So this is a little bit of the sentiment that Jay shares, and this is not actual data, but I wanted to represent why is it important that we are actually cracking the code on channel and the channel tech stack. Well, there's more investment in this space, meaning more companies are being built around the channel and partnerships to crack that code on how can we track the data, prove out the model, and of course, automate and or action everything that's going on in our partner ecosystem. I have a website, bdpaths.com. The keyword search has only been going up. I actually stopped investing in SEO because it was too pricey as a solopreneur, but the searches continue to go up. So, I ranked for it before and I was getting, X amount, and now I have X times two amount of traffic coming to my website. So that's an indicator, not just for my website, but in the space as well. The keyword search is increasing. The number of companies thinking about this based on some of the Canalys reports, and more companies hiring for this. Some of them don't know how to hire for it, and they hire for the general partnerships or general channel. But there are definitely more and more postings for this kind of role. So companies are trying to figure it out. I can definitely share in full screen. And I can also share these as well. I can share all of the, sorry about that. I can share all of these slides and you will have the recording for this as well. And if you can't see this, just let me know. But thank you. So why do we need tech? This is the average channel or partner team. You are, playing the violin times five while also trying to play the cello, keep the beat going, play all those trumpets. And, here's everything you need to do in a list: co-sell, co-market, enable, onboard, partner success, data ops, partner ops, reporting. And I intentionally made it cut off because, there's 17 more that you have to do. So this is why tech is important, because if you just add, someone in the space calls it the warm body problem to this, where you just add more bodies for each of these roles, that's going to slow things down because everyone is prone to error as a human. We don't have the best pattern recognition, especially when we're looking at data across hundreds of companies that we partner with. But also people get sick. People have priorities. They're in meetings. They can't necessarily action things at the right time or in real time. So we need tech to help enable us to make sure we can go through that. So what I've started to model here is what are the areas that tech can help us with. Now, I get into more practical, actual functions, but in general, the way you can think about this, and this is also how you can think about sales and marketing, so it's not necessarily any different. You have data that you have to go through. Call this your ICP information, but also your ideal partner profile information. Then you can start recruiting, and also all of that data can impact your internal impact and management of the channel, as well as the external impact and management. And again, I'll simplify this even further. And then, of course, there's the reporting and financial management, which, if you've ever done that in a spreadsheet before, that is a big pain. I've done it, and it is, you will bash your head against the wall trying to figure that out. And so will your finance team. They don't like nothing that isn't automated, especially with external vendors. All right, I got a question. Hi, Will. In your opinion, is a partner portal an outdated concept? Do you see any examples or best practices to rethink role and technology behind a vendor's partner portal and how to make it shine again? I don't think the partner portal is entirely outdated. I think some of the traditional incumbents may not have evolved as quickly as the needs of the ecosystem and the channel, meaning they were built for, let's say, one function, which I'll get into a bit later, in terms of like what areas of these functions that we're looking at right now can tech help with. The partner portal, as it's traditionally known, or the PRM, is only covering a portion of it. And I would say it doesn't necessarily solve that biggest pain point of how does the CRO know how to get more out of the channel and out of the partner program. That I think is a big gap in the ecosystem of this kind of technology at large. And I highlight that in the presentation as well. So I don't think they're entirely outdated. However, I do think there are some large gaps that newer incumbents are starting to solve for, which I'm excited about. But I'll get into some of those examples. Now, the reason I have this slide here is because without good data, you won't be able to do too well in the recruitment. You know, if you recruit the wrong partners because your ideal partner profile was not properly created, then everything else is going to suck. You're going to have poorer performance, less alignment with your ICP, and really making sure that your joint value is impacting the end client. So data, very important. Without it, you're going to have a hard time. And same with the financial management. Now, of course, executing in between is really important, but those two things are, like I said about the CRO, going to be the thing that convinces the CRO, CFO to say, yes, we love partners. Let's do more of it. Let's keep hiring for this role. Let's keep this function in the business. We don't need to lay them off. We need to have that data and that reporting. Now, I just alluded to the portals and the functions that they serve and the biggest gap. This is a good way to think about the internal and external impact and management of the channel. Now, the reason that I'm segmenting it in this way is because most of the technology has focused on this right side. How do we actually engage the partners? How do we send them content? How do we enable them? And this is all kind of like pushed to them. But the challenge with that, although it's great to, create automations to deliver content or programs to partners or with and through partners, that's all necessary. The biggest gap that the industry has faced is this internal impact and management. How does this actually tie back to sales, marketing, and customer success? And there are some tools that are getting closer to this to help us identify where the channel can help our sales team and we can enable the sales team back internally, or we can have an internal asset management system that identifies our partners and also gives us data on how we can best approach the ICP that we're trying to approach with the idea of partners in mind. That's starting to become more and more of a topic of discussion, but it's still a gap. So I wanted to make sure that we address that we as the channel, we need to think about more than just this right side in the execution, and also start to really consider how is this impacting the internal team, and how can we also do things like automate, get into and integrate with the tech that they're using, and of course, ideally surface partners in a more comprehensive way than something that's static that most channel or partner teams have today when it comes to enabling the internal team. So this will become important as well when I map out the actual functions that I will show you later, because there's going to be a very important piece of the puzzle that is managing partners outwardly, but also how do you bring them internally to, of course, have that revenue attribution. So this is a step in that direction. Again, like I said, I'll start to simplify this even further. Now, unfortunately, because this is a newer technology space, which is going through a rapid rise in the number of technologies being created, which Jay talks about a lot. It's a very similar growth trajectory that the MarTech industry went through during its early days, which is great, but also comes with some confusion because there's some category figuring out to do. PRM, ecosystem mapping, CRM, TCMA, PX, all of these different acronyms. I know this is not covering exactly all of them, but the language that these companies use, which I actually make a comment on later as well, is not great because it just adds to the confusion. And admittedly, I was at a company that helped create a new word. And I saw the confusion. There's a pro and a con to including these new words and acronyms, but ultimately they can be confusing. So this is to clarify, what is a PRM? It's a partner-centric activity and engagement platform in a very simple way. CRM is more customer-centric, and the beauty is we need to connect the PRM into the CRM, again, to close that gap. And then there's ecosystem mapping. So this is connecting two CRMs together, and it can also feed data into the PRM. So with your partner, you can have your CRM, your client and prospective client data, and you can overlap it with your partner, where you can see their client and prospective client data, where you can do some account planning and have further account intelligence. So you are able to do that, call it ecosystem mapping. TCMA, through channel marketing automation, that is its own island in Jay's picture. You may see PX thrown around, which is the partner experience. And if we think of the traditional sales marketing and success functions in a business, PX is the customer success of partnerships. How are we giving our partners a good experience? Because if they can choose between Google and Amazon for listing in the marketplace, why would they choose Google over Amazon? Well, it better be a better experience that they get, meaning it should be seamless and I should be satisfied using their partner ecosystem versus their competitors. A note on PRMs, we already saw a question related to portals. The portal is uh, not going to be the thing that solves everything for you. So PRMs are great for a lot of different things, and I'll be getting into that as well. But it's not going to be the only thing that you need. It's not going to save the partnerships program. It's not going to automate it for you. It is not partnerships on autopilot. Quick note on the evolution of these PRMs, because I do have a bet that these are the kinds of tools that are most important because they're most close to revenue and the actual transaction data, where we can start to model out effectiveness for that CRO and the CFO. From late 2023 to now, there's been more players in the space. These aren't the only three that have popped up, but these are three notable ones that are doing a lot and disrupting the space, where what we see here in Jay's PRM island is a lot of incumbents. And the question that came earlier already was, are partner portals too, archaic, for lack of better words? In some situations they are, but again, they have served a really good function for a while. But I mentioned there's a gap, and these incumbents are starting to fill those gaps as well. They're making some good competition for these larger players. But PRM is not the only tech. As we know, there's a bunch of different islands. And what I want to start planting the seeds for you here is there is more and more access to ecosystem level data. Now, ecosystem level data, the way I'll simplify it is there's first party data. This is data that you collect. This is from your website, your product. They downloaded a resource, whatever you collect through your tools, that is first party data. Then there's third-party data. This is data that you purchase from ZoomInfo, Apollo, wherever you're buying your data. It's assumed data based on, what they can scrape from the internet or what they can collect. That's going to be things like funding, announcements, company size, and so on, and generally contact information. However, there's second-party data. This is the data that is not the data that you own, but it's data that is out there in the ecosystem that you can collect. There are tools that help with this, like Crossbeam, and also Common Room is another example. There's many other tech that can do this, but these are two relatively well-known ones that have good marketing. And Crossbeam is that account mapping, the ecosystem mapping of the CRMs. So you can collect data from your partners. Again, you don't own it, but it's not inferred or assumed. It's actual data in someone else's CRM. You can use that, and I'll get into how you can use it in just a moment. And then Common Room can do things like track the social engagement, which again, it's not really inferred data. It's not data you purchase. It's actual engagement just outside of your company. So you can start to collect that data and then aggregate it. So Clay is another popular tool in the startup space, where they are allowing the companies to converge all this data into one place, aggregate it into some level of scoring. So you can create essentially an equation for data point A is more important than data point B. And then you can use AI to action that data as well. So it can send out an email or it can feed into a sales cadence. So that's really powerful because now what we're starting to do is we're starting to collect partner and channel level data in the ecosystem. It could be they recently purchased at our partner. That's some level of signal that they have money and are intending on investing in the strategy that we probably also help with. Then we can aggregate it in Clay. We can make sense of the data essentially. So we have this data, we collect it in real time, we can make sense of it. And then we can start actioning the data. So Superglue is another tool where if you're using CRM like Salesforce, then you can take your custom objects or the fields that again could be from a crossbeam and start actioning it. You can build automation to have, as an example, a really good example of our seller opened a deal. There's partner data associated with the account. Now we can trigger a workflow through Superglue that emails the partner and says, hey, we just opened an opportunity with your client. We know they're your best client. They have modules A, B, and C. Can we facilitate either an introduction or can we have a call where we can get some intelligence on that account? All of this, again, without the need of the person in the way or having to weed through all this data, you can set it up and then it can automate, and it's less of the cartoon character playing all the different instruments and more those instruments effectively playing themselves, and then you as a channel or partner person orchestrating instead of being the player in the actual band. This is a slice of the puzzle. This is that data puzzle and how you can aggregate an action throughout the rest of the flow. But I'll get into a broader vision of the functions and where this technology can actually help out. So here's an example. I'll just dangle this carrot here. We can go through this live if we have the time and if you're interested in it. This is an example of the different data points that you could collect. I mentioned first, second, and third party data, the tools that you could use to collect them. And what I have on the other side of this is how do we actually push this through the technology chain to then produce outcomes? And so there is a model that I've already mapped out that we can go through. And if you'd like that, just let me know. And I can even send you this resource if you want it as well. I don't think we have a chat function here, but just pop it in the Q&A and let me know if you would like this resource, and I'll have another resource or two to leverage. Like I said, ecosystem data is not necessarily well adopted. The industry doesn't really know how to yet. So I'll plant the seed for you, but let's dive into some other items. So this is a very basic map of what I just showed you around the data, recruitment, external and internal management, and then eventually getting to the finances. Now, where partnerships play a role is in this area for the most part. So this is where you would essentially invest in technology. Now, I'll start to break down the actual challenges that you can start identifying across this. But what we are starting to do here is we're starting to identify what is the entry point for the channel for us to inject into everything else that the company is doing, while also understanding that there are some things that we do outside of the system at the top here that we would be managing as a channel and partner team. I will definitely send it your way. Also, it's a Miro board, it's interactive. So thank you, Anton, and thank you, Mark. I'll get it to you. And you too, Ryan. Awesome. So, this is great. You might be thinking, okay, well, this gives me a bit of a better understanding, but what does this actually look like, at least from a technology standpoint? Now, if anyone is on here that saw my post on LinkedIn, you'll know that there was a lot of discourse around this picture where someone said, holy crap, that's a lot of tech. Who actually has the money to buy that? Now, there are some examples of organizations that have every technology under the sun. But what I want to use this for is, this is that ideal state. And like I said, later in the presentation, I'll help you actually identify where you as an individual can say, well, I should probably actually invest in this technology. And it's all going to focus around the function and the pain that you're feeling. But this is an example of what it could look like. So we recruit partners, so we get the data from somewhere, and either we have existing data or no existing data. We want to put it into something that helps us weed through all of the information. Partner Optimizer is an example of that. Again, there are other solutions that you can use for most of these functions. This is just a general example, not necessarily a hard recommendation, just painting the picture. But I do love what Dina's building at Partner Optimizer and all these technology companies. And then, there's Partner Fleet, which is the tool that will allow you to list partners in a marketplace. And then you can collect some data around that, present that to your clients. But then that will also feed into a PRM like Partner Stack, where transaction data can occur, where you can have, let's say, your partners that register through Partner Stack listed onto Partner Fleet, and then you can, have a link that is in Partner Fleet, where if the customer clicks it, they then are attributed in the CRM through this link here, which will then, of course, feed back into Partner Stack. And this is where I firmly believe that this kind of workflow is really important for teams because everything I just mentioned can effectively happen automatically, which would have taken someone, let's say, 60 minutes per partner to go through and set up the profile and make sure you got all the assets and the communication back and forth. And now there is a much more automated fashion for that. So you're saving a lot of time where you, as the channel team, can work on revenue producing activities. Of course, there's a bunch of other things that can happen here. You can collect data from Crossbeam, which is that second party data. So with your partners, combine it with some first and third party data, aggregate it with Clay, push it in the HubSpot. And then these are some sales, marketing, and success tools where, the general prospecting and general business happenings are going through these tools. And then you get the contract out, they sign it, and then they pay. And then, of course, that payment and transaction data goes back into the PRM. So that's essentially the loop. Now, the discourse that happened from the LinkedIn post, which was very good. So if anyone's on that added a comment, thank you, because it was a well-performing post. This is generally better than some of my other posts that I put on LinkedIn. Jay McBain himself engaged with it, which is fantastic. But what I found was these kinds of comments. Not one partner team in the world would get access to this tech stack. You know, Clark says you missed the most two, the two most common, which is Sheets and Excel. And Mr. Chris says this isn't bad at all, but I would argue that this is not an ecosystem solution. Rather, it's very much a channel solution, and it's conflating an issue of, are we actually solving the problem of the internal organization? But it is potentially unrealistic. Ryan, you asked a question. Heard your point on cost getting crazy, but what jumps out to me would be the IT support required. That has to be a big issue as well. I agree. Not to mention all the security reviews that need to happen. That takes up time and energy. That's why what we'll get into is a much more simple form of recommendation. And this feedback from the folks on LinkedIn was very helpful because now we can actually paint a better picture of maybe it looks something like this, where you're probably using either Google Sheets or, Excel, and then it's into one tool here. So there's effectively one partner tool. You can use Crossbeam for free, but you're using a lot of Google Sheets to Partner Stack to maybe managing it here. But, the bane of the existence of most teams is going to lie in this area, which hopefully it's not Google Sheets. If you have a tool, and this isn't, necessarily a recommendation for Partner Stack, but this is why going back to one of those original questions about PRM, PRM solves a lot of the headache of the intake and the transaction data of the channel, which is such a pain and such a low value add task, information gather and weeding through financial data. It is a huge time sink. And it's very important because if your partners are not getting paid, they're not going to trust that your program can run as efficiently as possible. So they're less likely to engage. So solving those first is good and important. But unfortunately, this is probably the realistic take for most channel teams that maybe they have the PRM. So again, maybe it looks like something like this, but most teams are probably working out of their own sheets or just defaulting to the CRM. But there's, of course, a lot of problems with that. So the reason I wanted to go through all of this is because what this allows us to do is start to identify and map the functions, and we can start to stack rank the importance of those functions as well. And so how do we make sense of a technology decision across this? I'll be getting into that. Let me double check these questions. Anton says, on this subject, we need to evolve what the expectations look like to grow a partner channel. Every other go-to-market function has a significantly higher software budget. It's time for channel teams to have more budget for their solutions, especially if they can obviate the need to hire more headcount, especially early on. Very good point. I would say it's a chicken or the egg problem because if you say to a CRO or CFO, hey, why does marketing have so much budget and they can buy so much technology? Uh, they'll be able to say, well, we know that it works, or we're more confident that it can work. Now, I know that Anton, that your belief here is we can prove it out, and the more that we prove it out, the more budget we will get. And of course, we're all biased, but we know that the channel and partnerships convert at a higher rate, and of course, have much more exponential potential. So we just need to prove it, and that is the biggest gap. So that's where getting into recommendations, which I'll get to next, is how the heck do we decide on all of this tech? So there's going to be a few fundamental things, and then I'll break these down a bit further so that you can walk through this yourself as well. But ultimately, I want you to focus on what is my current challenge? Which metrics are actually suffering from the partnering experience? Is it that we, think we need to buy all of this technology just because? Or do we actually have a problem in recruitment? Are we getting a lot of partners, but they're low quality? Maybe we should identify what makes a good quality partner. Are we marketing partners, but they're asking us to highlight to our customers more often, or they feel that the process is too painful to actually have some form of marketing in terms of a marketplace? Okay, well, that might be a problem. Let's see what the actual conversion potential is to revenue for implementing some solution that solves for that part of the process. Uh, Identify what a challenge is. You don't just need tech just because it's a flashy thing and because they market to you and send you a bunch of emails or cold call you. Uh, Hopefully, they're not cold calling you and they're instead going through partners. But you don't just need a technology, it needs to solve a challenge. So, identify what is an actual challenge, and I'll get into how to further quantify this to make it really worth solving. And ultimately, no one has or says, I have a partner relationship management problem. That's too wide. And so, what we need to do is get granular. And I always say that if you focus on these metrics, you'll make the case much better for yourself and to your CRO for why do we need to buy this? And am I actually going to get use out of it? Or is it just going to stay there? So, in summary of that, less what am I trying to do and more what am I trying to solve for? So, step one, what type of program do I have? This nuance is the best place to start because each stack of technology is going to look different based on the type of program that you have. So, if I have an affiliate program, I'm going to need more affiliate focused software. If I have a reseller program, I need a reseller focused solution. Now, this is where doing your due diligence and asking the technologies that you eventually evaluate if they are better suited for, affiliate versus reseller is going to play a big role because the actual recommendation of the different technologies for this chain is going to vary, and there's going to be specialized technologies for these different areas. There are some generalists, so if you have multiple programs, then that should play a role as well. Hey, I have 3 types of channel programs. Which technology can actually help me support all 3 and is not just only, let's say, affiliate or reseller focused? What industry do I play in? What are my partners used to? Do my partners know that most of the companies they partner with already use InPartner. Great. Maybe that should be my solution of choice. Now, this isn't necessarily the be all decision maker, but it's important because the speed to understanding how to use the tool on the partner side is really important, but also the industry knowledge of everything down to the ways that partners are paid out. Maybe it's a usage model and a specific technology is better suited for paying out based on what the customer actually consumes with your solution. That's going to play a huge role in how you manage these payouts because if not, then you may be losing out on a lot of strategic partnering opportunities. So if the tech can't handle that type of partnership, then we may not be as well suited to have that technology. So step one, what type of program do I have? Start there. Step two is start to qualify your problems. Where's the actual pain point? Where are you spending the most time? Where are you seeing the lowest amount of conversion? Where is your specific number tied to? Are you a partner development manager or channel development rep where you're simply bringing in new partners? Maybe that's what the department needs is something related to recruitment or partner data. Or maybe you're on the partner success side, partner enablement, channel enablement, where you are building programs that onboard the channel partners. If that's the case, then it might be between one of these two. So, what part of the process feels the worst? Are you spending the most time on? And what is the lowest value task that you're doing? As well as um, where are we in our maturity? Meaning, are we actually able to bring in more partners? Are we just starting? Well, we probably don't need to optimize our partner recruitment. But if we have 10,000 partners and we still think we can recruit more and we have a pretty oiled machine on the right side of the equation, well, maybe we should optimize there because a 1% lift in efficiency or quality in the partners that we bring in that are willing to activate could produce some pretty meaningful results. So, which part of the process feels the worst? Based on your maturity, does that really matter? Are you actually at the stage where you should be focusing on that area, or are there more pressing areas that you should be focusing on? And do we have existing resources we can use? You can do a heck of a lot with different automation tools. What if you just have your list of partners in a sales cadence that you use to communicate to them on a regular basis in terms of a drip campaign? You can be savvy, and partners don't necessarily need the fanciest new tool to receive the message you need to send them. It just needs to get in front of them, and it needs to get to them in the way that they prefer, meaning maybe it's through Slack or LinkedIn or WhatsApp or text or email. It needs to simply just deliver the information at the right time and, of course, in the way that they consume it. So, do we have existing resources we can use? Sometimes this is not the case. I would not try and pigeonhole your partner finance situation of how do we process payouts into tools that are not purpose built for it because there are a lot of nuance that most of those tools cannot handle. However, for something like partner recruitment, you can use a sales cadencing tool for sending out the messages. So repurpose what you can and identify if you have existing resources. Then start to quantify your problems. What is your pain? What metric is suffering because of it? If it isn't solved, what's going to happen? And read all of this as like, how do you keep your job and how do you hit your bonus? If it's not actually causing a pain of certain things here, this isn't exhaustive, but ultimately, if the number of source qualified sales opportunities from your partners is not lacking, then why do you really need to invest in technology if your metrics are not suffering? So where's your pain in the process? What is the impact that it's having? What metric is suffering because of it? And if it's solved, what is going to then happen? And what is your life going to be like? Is it going to, help you achieve more in sales qualified opportunities? Okay, great. Then maybe you should focus on it because again, The unit economics to a CRO or CFO are going to make a lot more sense because you can say, well, if we get a 10% increase in conversion rate or number of leads submitted by our channel partners, then of course we're going to increase our total revenue closed, which is what I'm held accountable for. So qualify your problems, then quantify your problems. And now let's get into some examples. Also, stop me if you have any questions. I'm keeping up with the ones that are there. Do you already feel these kinds of pains? Have you gone through this process and you're still confused? Or let me know if this is helpful. This is how I would think about it when investing in technology, because I know my CRO or my CFO is going to ask, why are we buying a recruitment tool when we have, a sales engagement tool that can do it? You better have a good reason on specifically which metrics are being impacted. So, how do you decide on the technology? Here's some example metrics and some challenges just to start getting those gears turning. Maybe you have a poor conversion rate with prospecting. Maybe there is, the volume of partner source leads because it's a co-marketing problem or an enablement problem. We need more of those. There's a lower amount than we were projecting for this quarter or year. How do we increase that? Well, of course, we need to do some programmatic things, but we also can consider technology. And here are some example solutions. So again, if it's a recruitment problem or a co-marketing problem, maybe you could use a tool like Partner Utopia, which again helps you to identify your ideal partner profile and engage them. Structured web through channel marketing. Maybe we just need to do more marketing and more structured marketing with our partners. Maybe we just need to identify more opportunities for co-selling or sourcing pipeline from partners, or maybe our velocity of our sales with the channel is lacking. Maybe for some reason it's slower than our direct sales pipeline. Let's identify the problem, let's identify the metrics, and then we can implement technology. So for this one, as an example, Channel Force could help you with that. Now, no wonder it's hard. I looked at some of the websites of these vendors in preparation for this presentation. I'm not going to call out anyone's names, but they produce marketing content like grow faster together. Obviously, this is partnerships, this is channel. Of course, it's going to help us grow faster together. Tell me where specifically in the process you're helping. That is going to help connect, earn, grow. That could be anything. That could be a loyalty reward program. I'm not going to go through the rest, but I empathize with you because when I read that marketing, I don't read this solves a problem for me. I read this does some nice things, and that tells me it's a vitamin, not a painkiller or the tools needed to perform surgery. We do have about 14-ish minutes left. We can use this time for Q&A, but I also have more information prepared around the idea of RevOps. See a question got popped in here. Ryan, you said thank you. No worries if you need to drop. This will be recorded. And yeah, drop your questions in the Q&A. I'll talk more about this idea of RevOps, and I'll start with an analogy. And I'll leave you with this idea, and I'll again summarize the recommendations for how to choose. The revenue team is on a train and they're headed in one direction. Channel teams or partner teams are smelting new rods, hammering them into the ground, and trying to course correct. So we are, these people here when the revenue train is going a different way. Now, what that means is we're banging our head against the wall with fewer resources and we're laboring on the track trying to build. When in reality, you could be fuel for the entire revenue function because we know that partners produce quality leads. They help us market better. They deliver more success. We're stickier when there are partners involved, meaning our retention is better. We know all of this, but we are not proving it as well as we should be. So revenue operations, RevOps, that is your ticket to success. And the more that you focus on the RevOps model, the better. Here's a good example. This is from the company called Winning by Design, and they do, I think it's called revenue architecture. Essentially, what we're looking at here is the journey that a customer goes through. They're initially a prospect, then they get qualified by marketing, then by sales, then they purchase, then they go live, and then there's upgrade cycles that they go through, and then we can calculate the LTV. This is what you should be focusing on in terms of impacting the business. This isn't the only thing that a CRO cares about, but this is how they're thinking about it. They're thinking about how do we acquire and expand clients. And they're also looking at the volume, conversion rate, and time to convert across these areas. So, how many leads are we getting? What's the conversion rate there, and how long does it take to get to an MQL? Okay, it's A, B, and C. Great. That's immediately giving a CRO levers to pull. And that is allowing the CRO to say, here's why I believe we should invest more money here because we're currently spending whatever, $2 million to acquire X amount of prospects. And we know they convert at this rate. Great. Let's do 4 million and see how it changes. It's, I don't want to oversimplify the equation that that decision making process is done through, but that's a much clearer identification of what we should do and why versus let's just spend more on the channel. Maybe we know that they produce X amount of revenue, but I don't know how to get more volume per se that converts better per se across this funnel. Maybe it's I can't use my hands on here, but look, pretend I'm focusing on the the left half of this bow tie. If I'm looking at this as a CRO, it's a black box. Does this left side, including the right side as well, but this left side of how do I get more? It's a black box, meaning I don't know. I can't go to my CRO and say, well, we're actually doing these activities which directly impact the MQL volume and conversion rate for our business. That's a problem. The more your tools that you invest in the channel tie back to this, the better. And the more that we as a channel team can say that we are impacting these stages, the better. Because then we can make a better comparison of here's accounts with versus without partners. I'll quickly go through this one, but basically, we're over here as a channel. We're operating in a silo. Staying disconnected will lead to less predictability, more time sink. Like I mentioned, we have more than 17 roles and ultimately less revenue produced because we're our own bottlenecks. But if we connect into the existing system, more scalability, more efficiency, clearer ROI, and better alignment. So my call to you is, you can screenshot this if you want. Identify the questions to answer in how do we actually map all of this to the RevOps function. Well, these are some questions that you can use to work on a project to answer some of these pieces of missing information. And then, of course, that's when you'll be much better in a position to say, we need to buy this technology because A, B, and C. So even if you're like, yeah, sounds good, I got a RevOps team, they'll figure it out. It's their problem. No worries. Here's a summary of how to make sense of the tech stack. Diagnose your actual pain points based on the functions that I mentioned. I'll have a screen on the next one that you can screenshot to identify this is my pain. I want you to be able to point your finger. This hurts when we do this. Then quantify it. Identify those core metrics as to what is actually being hurt and by how much do we think it is. What happens if it continues? If we're scaling at a rate of whatever 3x per year, how is this going to impact us? Are we able to follow through with the 3x scale? Or is it going to continue to slow us down? And then determine how your life, read your bonus, is better if it's solved. So, can we convert at a better rate? Can we bring in more leads? Can we reduce the time that it takes for a partner to onboard and give us leads? That is going to ultimately impact you. So of course, use the model and you can screenshot this if you'd like. I will leave it on here because I only have a CTA of a thank you. And I'm on LinkedIn. Follow me, connect with me, ask me questions. I'm here to help, but I'll leave this on screen. So if anyone wants to screenshot it, here we are.
Thanks very much, Will. I'm just checking the chat myself. Just a couple of questions then to end. So it was a really practical session, and I think Anton in the chat had raised, how do we create the business case? Is our time to get investment? Um, but are there any practical advice to say, okay, if we need to build the business case to the CRO and the CFO, should I almost be building a buyer committee or an influence and set with RevOps and different parts of the business in order to come with a business case? Any advice on how to do that?
Absolutely. So if you've tried to do this manually, especially for some of those core pain points that I mentioned of, intake of partners, getting things into the CRM, or especially the finances, talk to those people. If you've tried it manually and they tell you, hey, this was a painful process, bring them into the call, because then one, you may get a bit of budget from other areas, hopefully, but you're going to amplify yourself and your position in that buying committee. So I would say yes, absolutely. And that goes back to those metrics and quantifying the problem, because if sales or marketing is in the call with you and they go, yeah, we do like working with partners, we just don't know how to do more of it, and you can say, hey, CRO, did you hear what they just said? I can help you with that. It's going to be an investment in this tool because we've identified this as a pain and this is what's going to happen if we solve it. You 100% should always have, unless if it's again like a partner recruitment or these higher level items, you should have someone else in the organization with you. At the very least, finance or RevOps, but ideally sales and marketing as well.
Great. And then my last question, I think, we're very familiar with first party data, third party data. It's a bit of a cultural or an educational shift for, say, direct sales teams to feel comfortable with account mapping and looking at partner data and, going to market together. Do you see an acceleration of that acceptance of pooling data and going to market together? Because it is still quite, yeah, it's still quite a hurdle, I think, culturally, isn't it, for indirect and direct sales teams to do?
Yes, absolutely. So what I've always found is the revenue tech space is very innovative. They're finding new ways to help sellers sell or marketers market. And one of the current trends is signal-based selling, which takes this idea of, okay, maybe we have some engagement on our website, but what else is going on in the buyer's world? Who else are they engaging with? So one, there's already technologies being created for this. There's playbooks being created for how do you navigate these signals. So in the more innovative tech spaces, they are adopting this, and what's going to come from that are the practices to take action on that as well. So in short, it will happen. I would say the best way to convince that seller and the marketer is hopefully they're a little bit channel oriented in your organization, and maybe they've consumed some of the Jay McBain information. But I always go back to the fact that buyers have more knowledge than sellers these days. Sellers or marketers are generally not the expert that do the role. If they are, then you're at a good organization. And there's less and less of an inclination to speak with a seller or engage with a company. Jay McBain talks about the 28 points of influence throughout the buyer's journey. Your company has access to four of them. So if you want to really impact the buyer and align with them, you have to engage with the other 24 points throughout the buyer's journey. And that requires, of course, engaging with partners and using the data around that as well. And so, what we need to do as channel and partner teams is kind of do the work for other parts of the organization. Meaning, if we're doing account intelligence planning or account planning, territory planning, use some partner data in there where you don't need to have the seller co-sell per se. They just need to target an account that you can then come over the top with and say, great, well, we already started a conversation. We targeted them. Let's bring in the partner to come help out, and you can help orchestrate that interaction. So all that to say is it's going to become more and more adopted. There's more technologies that can help with ecosystem level data. The second one is that will allow for easier enablement and done for you type work for the seller so that you can do your job as the channel or partner person to come over the top and facilitate the more strategic element of the co-sell versus what most unfortunately have to do today, which is enable them to death with another lunch and learn. And that's not going to help out. You'd be in a much better position if you're serving up the account or opportunity on a silver platter. And the way you do that is with things like ecosystem data injected into what you're seeing on the screen here, which is the basic workflow for go-to-market.
Okay, brilliant. I think we're at time. There is a question from Francisco, but I guess you can reach out, and everything that you've seen today in terms of presentation, supporting data, we can share. It was a really brilliant, interactive and insightful session, Will, and thank you for all of the participants and their contribution too. And looking forward to you registering for other sessions in the week. But thanks very much, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And if you need help, like I said, Will Taylor on LinkedIn. I create content and send me a DM. I'm happy to help. Thank you for